Have you ever wondered why a certain card choice in a format becomes the quote-unquote standard choice? Be it Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries in 2017 Spiral format or Forbidden Lands in April 2023 format, there's a reason why these cards become incredibly mainstream. And in today's video, I'm going to explain the secrets behind how the best players determine whether a certain card is worth playing in your deck or not, so you can build your decks as optimally as possible no matter the format. So whether you're new to the game or a seasoned veteran, hopefully you'll be able to find the information in this video useful. My name is tcgsam and welcome to Yugioh 101, where I share tips and tricks on how to improve the results you see in competitive play. Without any further ado, let's just hop straight into it. So nowadays, most modern decks have some number of flex spots where you can play cards that aren't a part of your deck's main engine. In other words, these could be hand traps like Ash Blossom and Joy Spring, utility cards like Harpy's Feather Duster, or consistency cards like Pot of Desires. In any case, one of the most important parts of deck building is deciding on which tech cards to put in your deck. Since you only have a limited amount of space to play these cards, you're going to want to pick the one that makes the most sense for the given format and in your specific deck. Now, the first thing that you're going to want to think about is what role you want these tech cards to fulfill. Do you think your deck needs more defensive cards like hand traps, more consistency cards, or more utility cards? Once you decide on the roles that you want your tech cards to play, then you can go about deciding which ones make the most sense to include. This is going to heavily depend on the deck you're playing as well as the format that you're in, so I won't get into too much detail as to how you might decide which role you want your cards to play, but through testing you can determine what you feel like your deck needs the most when you're playing up against other decks in the format. So now, once you decide on what type of cards you want in your deck, how do you actually decide which ones are best? Let's suppose that you have hand traps in your deck's flex spots. I'll be going over a process for how to decide which ones make the most sense to play in the main deck, side deck, or not at all. The first thing you should consider is how this card interacts with your own deck. To begin with, are there any potential anti-synergies or special synergies present? For example, if you're playing a graveyard-based deck, then playing a hand trap like Dimension Shifter doesn't make much sense. Likewise, if you need an empty board to play the game, hand traps like Nibiru the Primal Being may not be the best choice either. These hand traps can then almost always be discarded from your choices regardless of how good they may be against other decks because they significantly set you back as well. On the other hand, if having your cards get banished or having the extra body on board from Nibiru is somewhat helpful, then these should have a bit more favorable weighting than other hand traps, even if their impact against other decks isn't necessarily higher than something else. Speaking of impact against other decks, this is going to be the next thing you want to consider. You're going to want to see which hand traps have the highest impact against the most common decks that you're going to face and consider main decking these, since you'll be facing those decks the most often in a competitive setting. You'll then want to consider side decking more niche hand traps against specific matchups if there are enough decks in the format that warrant it. Using April 2023 as an example, we see that most people are main decking Ash Blossom and Joy Spring as well as Infinite Impermanence because they have the most impact against most of the decks in the meta, whereas a card like Dimension Shifter, for example, is sided in certain decks like Kashtira because it's not great against the most common deck of the meta, being Kashtira. Of course, these choices are going to be format dependent since different decks are good at different times, but you sort of get the idea. The tech cards in your main deck should be impactful against most, if not all of the meta, and the ones in your side deck should be very impactful against at least some of the matchups you're playing against. Otherwise, it may not be worth playing at all. If you're really running low on space in your deck and can't decide which tech card would be better, I'd recommend playing a few test games to see which one would be most effective in each match. So while the example that I just went through was for hand traps specifically, you can apply this process for other tech cards as well. Essentially, you want to first determine, is it going to work in your deck? Then determine how impactful it will be against other decks you face. And finally, prioritize the ones that are most impactful since you have a limited amount of space. Remember that these choices can be heavily dependent on the specific meta you may be playing in, so not decking what others played in a big tournament may not be effective if you're playing at a more casual locals, for example. So anyways, that's going to do it for me today, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you learned something new or are interested in seeing more videos like this, I ask that you please subscribe to the channel. Only a very small percentage of my viewers are actually subscribed, and it would really help keep me motivated to keep posting more videos like this in the future. That being said, I just want to thank you guys so much for watching once again, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.